Today we will be talking about colonies and colonization. The dictionary definition of colony is rather long. There are a number of explanations. And the very first explanation that comes to our mind in our modern times is actually this definition. So, a place that is which is ruled by a different power from a distance, like European countries colonizing Africa. But early colonization is actually was not like that. It was more like this: people leaving their native country in order to form a new settlement, and which is connected culturally or economically or politically to the parent nation. So the one of the earlier colonization nations were Greek cities, and as you may know, Greek cities were independent city-states. So every city was like a country or state of its own, and they were establishing colonies. And we'll be talking about the reasons later. Here we are looking at the Aegean world, and here we are seeing the whole of Mediterranean. And the red cities are Greek cities, and it was, of course, not only the Greek cities that were creating colonies, but for instance, here we see as yellow are the Phoenician colonies built by Phoenicia. And overall, these cities shared a common culture. People in those cities were speaking the same language, they were building similar buildings, and their cities had similar features. And this is a partial list, incomplete list of some cities, some Greek colonies built by some city-states. For instance, the city of Amisos is built by colonists from Miletus, and this city is called today Samsun. And the city of Assos was built by colonists from Lesbos, and so on. If you look at the list, it's kind of eye-opening, very interesting. For these cities founded by Greek colonists, and also later for Roman cities that are founded by Rome, there is one unifying factor. Public buildings define the urban form of the city. So the urban form is, or the character of the city is quite common, again, because of the common culture in both cases. And mostly the character of the city is defined by public buildings. Public buildings dominate the city form. And these are more or less a complete list of public buildings in a Greek city and also a colony city, Greek colony. And we'll be looking at those one by one. Agora is an open public space, and basically this is the center of public life. It acts as a marketplace. Main religious buildings and shrines are located here, as you can see in the plan. For instance, to the left we can see Athens Agora, and right at the center we see Temple of Ares. And to the right we see Assos Agora, and again to the left we see a temple. And also there can be other civic buildings located in the Agora. Again to the left we see the Odeon building in Athens Agora. So basically it's an open space. It's like a city square for today's understanding. Theater, well, this is self-explanatory. Theater is a center of entertainment, plays festivals, all sorts of things. And also it acts as a formal gathering place for citizens. And here we see the theater of Epidaurus, rather well preserved. That's a very important building, Stoa. Stoa is a colonnaded portico, and it has various public uses. It works as an extension of the marketplace. Also, informal gatherings can take place there, like teachers can meet their students, philosophers meet with their students. And usually they are built around the agora. Not always, but most of the time, agora is surrounded by stoas. In this image, we see the stoas in the Assos Agora. And as you can see in the picture, the northern agora has two floors. So this is also rather common. Temple, well, obviously, temples are religious buildings, and always they are dedicated to a certain goddess or a certain god. They can be located in their own courtyards. There are many examples like that, or they can be located in public spaces, like in an agora. And this is the Apollo temple in Didyma, southwestern Anatolia. Bouleuterion is a small public building. It's a administrative building. It is like a senate. This is where the city assembly would meet and make decisions, fight with each other, and discuss things related with the city matters. Odeon is, well, looks like a theater. Actually, it's very hard to differentiate them from theater architectural wise, but it is for mostly for concerts. This is where musical recitals take place or poetry readings take place. It's specifically for musical plays. A gymnasium is a public building for training, for physical training, and more specifically, training for uh, athletes who will be taking place in public sporting events takes place here. A stadium is where these sporting events are taking place, and here we are seeing the Stadium of Epidaurius, and it has a rectangular form that differentiates it from a hippodrome. Hippodrome is very similar to a stadium, but since hippodrome is where public horse races take place, it has semicircular ends. At least one of the ends is semicircular, so the horses can turn easily. And finally, Acropolis is the citadel of the city. Normally, this is on the top of a hill for best protection, and it is always surrounded by walls. And it may include public buildings, temples, and other sort of buildings. And here we are seeing the Acropolis of Athens, one of the most famous acropolises. And city walls are for protection. That's quite obvious. Now we will look at a very famous Greek city, Priene, at the west coast of Anatolia, next to the Meander Delta today. It's on a low hill. It's located on a low hill. Well, you can start to feel the sense of the city. We are getting closer, and you can recognize some of the public buildings, I imagine. And this is the plan superimposed with the aerial photograph. The interesting thing about, well, one of the interesting things about Priene is actually once it was a harbor city. Before Meander filled in and the harbor, it was next to the sea, exactly like that. And here we see where it is located. We will be talking more about Priene in class. This is an, well, artist's impression of Priene. It was founded around 350 BC, and it is presumed that it had 4,000 to 5,000 inhabitants. And this is an overall plan of the city, a more detailed plan, and a model of the central city. Now we'll look at Roman colonization very quickly, and this is, well, an image showing the growth of the Roman Empire. Basically, at first century current era, Rome dominated all the known world, or the known Western world. All the Mediterranean basin was under Roman control, and also Northern Europe and even Britain. And this is Roman Empire at its maximum with some different regions of the empire. And these are some cities founded as colonies by Rome, and these are the ones which are still alive. For instance, Bologna was called Bononia by the Romans. Florence was Florentia. Paris was Lutetia Parisorium, and so on. Again, go over the list, it's quite shocking. And the full list of Roman cities is much, much longer than that. And most of these Roman colonies was founded as a legion camp called castrum. So the very first act was a Roman army, a legion, would go to a new area, and it had a very, very certain form, as we can see in this Asterix cartoon. Actually, it's very accurate, and to our left we can see a diagram of the city. It was very organized, very planned, consisting of a number of streets, and again, in most of the cases, it had a rectangular or square shape. And this is a diagram of a typical Roman city. There are two main streets, Cardo, north and south orientation, and Decumanus, east and west. So these are main two streets. And again, almost as a rule, at the intersection of these two streets, the main public place of the city is located, the Forum. And again, in most cases, in almost in all cases, it's a planned city. So the building blocks insulae are very clearly defined. And some of the important buildings are outside of the city walls. The larger buildings like the amphitheater and circus are located outside of the city walls. And in some cases, Cardo doesn't intersect with Decumanus, but it just stops there. So instead of a cross plan, it is more like a T. And the same thing we said for Greek colonies is true for Roman colonial cities. Public buildings define the urban form in those towns. And the names are a little bit different in Roman cities, and there are new typologies, but some of them are continuous from Greek culture to Roman culture, like agora becomes forum. There are architecture differences, obviously, we'll talk about those later, but basically it's the same. And you can look at the list, and we'll go over that also very quickly. Forum is, well, the counterpart of agora in Greek cities. It's a central marketplace, and we are seeing the forum in Pompeii in this photograph. Theater, well, obviously, center of entertainment. This is Aspendos Theater, very close to Antalya. And architecture, there are differences from Greek theaters. We'll also talk about that later. A new typology invented by Romans is the amphitheater. And amphitheater was the location for gladiator fights and also larger public gatherings. And it was, again, in most cases, an ellipsoid, not a circle, but an ellipsoid. Temple, very similar to Greek world, dedicated to a god or a goddess. A new form, new architectural form is the basilica. You know, the basilical form. But in Roman times, in Roman cities, basilica is not a religious building. Actually, it is the counterpart of a modern town hall. This is where business and legal matters are discussed. Library, well, obviously, it's a library. This is where the books are kept. Circus is like a hippodrome. This is where horse and chariot races take place, and also other major public ceremonies. This is the hippodrome in Tire, in northern Africa. A new public building typology and very important one for Roman cities are baths. It is for hygiene, but also for exercise and also for socialization. These are bath buildings in Bath, UK. Well, you can guess very easily, I think, where the city takes its name from. And also a new architectural form invented by Romans are aqueducts, used for transportation of water. And well, obviously, you all know this aqueduct. Also, a new architectural form invented by Romans is the Triumphal Arch. This is a monument basically honoring victorious generals, and this is the Arch of Constantine in Rome. And very quickly, we'll look at a Roman colonial town, which we will discuss more in detail in class. This is Timgat in northern Africa, close somewhere in Tunisia. And its full name is Colonia Marciana Ulpia Traina Tamugadi. It was founded by the Emperor Trajan in year 100. Once we get closer, the city form is very evident. You can see different buildings and different elements of the city form. It is very well preserved city. And here's the plan of it. Okay, now please move to your test.